Gordy had two artists at Motown who could hear music differently than anyone else in the building. He put them in separate studios. They found each other anyway. The friendship between Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder is one of the least documented significant relationships in American popular music. Not because it was hidden. They spoke about each other publicly. They appeared at each other's events. They acknowledged what the other meant. But the depth of it, the specific texture of what they were to each other, exists mostly in the record of what happened when one of them died. Stevie Wonder was born in 1950. Marvin Gaye was born in 1939. When Stevie came to Motown as a child prodigy in 1961, Marvin was already in the building, a young artist trying to establish himself as something more than a session musician. The 11-year gap between them was large enough that they were never simply peers. But at Motown, where the infrastructure of the building and the label created a specific kind of proximity, they were in each other's presence from early on. What connected them was not the gap, but the similarity. Both of them heard music in a way that exceeded the commercial framework they were being asked to work within. Both of them would spend years in creative conflict with that framework, arguing for artistic independence, for the right to make records that were about something beyond the chart formula. Both of them won that argument, eventually, through commercial success that made the argument unanswerable. And both of them recognized in the other the specific quality of hearing that made this possible. The accounts of their friendship from people who knew them describe something that functioned at a level below the public record. They talked about music the way people talk about a shared religion, with the specific shorthand of two people who have been thinking about the same things from different angles for a long time. Stevie would describe harmonies he was working on, and Marvin would finish the thought. Marvin would describe arrangements he was hearing in his head, and Stevie would place them in a genre context that Marvin had not considered. They were, by multiple accounts, each other's most useful listeners. The question that people who care about this history keep asking is, why did they never make an album together? The commercial logic was overwhelming. Two of the most significant artists in Motown's catalog, both willing to push beyond the label's standard framework, both with credibility that would have made the collaboration a guaranteed critical and commercial event. The answer, such as it is, involves the specific way that proximity and mutual respect and creative independence coexist at a high level. Both of them were fundamentally soloists. Not in the narrow sense. Both collaborated extensively with other artists. Both produced work that required genuine creative partnership. But in the deeper sense, both of them had a specific relationship with their own creative vision that made sharing the primary authorship of something difficult. They were better as listeners for each other than as co-authors, and they seemed to understand this without having to discuss it explicitly. What Stevie Wonder said about Marvin Gaye after his death in 1984 was not the measured language of a professional colleague responding to a loss. It was the language of someone for whom the world had become a materially different place. He described Marvin as irreplaceable in a way that was specific, not the generic irreplaceability of any great artist, but the specific irreplaceability of someone whose particular quality of hearing will not occur again in the same form. He performed at the tribute concerts. He spoke in interviews with a specificity about what the friendship had been that went beyond what professional courtesy required. He used the present tense in places where the past tense would have been grammatically correct, in the way that people do when they have not fully processed an absence. The music they made separately during the years of their friendship carries the trace of the proximity. This is not a claim that can be fully documented. The specific exchanges, the specific conversations, the specific ways that each of them heard the other's records and incorporated what they heard are not reconstructible from the public record. But the arc of both careers through the 1,970 seconds, the ways both of them pushed toward a more personal and politically engaged form of soul music at roughly the same time, using different approaches to arrive at related destinations. This is not coincidence. Two people who talked about music as seriously as they talked about it, who listened to each other with the specific attention of someone who understands what they are hearing, leave marks on each other's work. Marvin Gaye died on April 1, 1984. Stevie Wonder was 43 years old and still had decades of work ahead of him. He carried the friendship forward in the way that the surviving member of any significant creative relationship carries it. Not by replacing it, not by resolving it, but by continuing to work in a world where the specific quality of listening that Marvin provided is no longer available. Gordy put them in separate studios. The building was not that big. They found each other in the hallways, in the parking lot, in the specific informal spaces that the Motown infrastructure created between the formal sessions. Two men who heard music differently than the people around them, in proximity for 20 years, making each other's ears better. That is what the friendship was. The music they made separately is the evidence of what it produced. The album they never made is the absence at the center of it. Not a tragedy. They each made extraordinary things alone, but an absence. The specific record that two people who heard each other clearly could have made together and chose not to, or never found the right moment for, or protected by keeping separate. It is still not made. It will not be made. What remains is the music they each produced in the presence of someone who understood it. That is not nothing. It is most of everything.